What I am most excited about for retail and for retailers is because of the speed of technology and the innovation, we've never been in such a strong position to bridge the gap. However, we also have to change our mindset of how the relationship between the solution provider and the retailer exists.
Vicky, you've had the rare opportunity to experience retail from almost every seat at the table. You've been a retailer, a technology provider, and also an advisor. What's one insight that you have that most people in the industry don't?
Oh my gosh, only one insight. Pareiya, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me. I would say from an insight standpoint that it is, look, I'm a community builder and I'm believe in relationships. So I would say that the best insights that I get have to do with how we think about relationships. And I would say that one of the bigger problems in the industry is people making assumptions of what other people know. So in some cases, solution providers, they desperately want to understand the retail business. They feel like they understand the challenges of a retailer. They probably understand the business, not in a good way, but they may not understand the challenges. And the retailers really don't understand the methodologies and the business of what it takes to bring products to market for them. So I would say that there are some misconceptions, and that's what we like to dig into and to really break down.
Love that perspective, and I absolutely agree. I think the consumer behavior has evolved over the decades, right? The modern consumer that we have is starkly different from the kind of consumer we had post COVID era and before that, right? um, Tell us more about how the consumer expectations have evolved, right? What does the modern consumer need, which maybe the retailers are having a hard time in understanding, and so are the vendors or solution providers?
The expectations of the consumer has changed a lot, and it isn't something that they specifically think of. It has evolved just based on their everyday life and how they, not just how they shop, but how they work, how they raise children, what resources are available to them. People forget that the consumer is a whole living being with a whole life and all of the experiences versus just how are they interacting with my brand. So when you think about how their expectations have changed, it is influenced by so many things. Convenience is such a big part of everyone's life right now. And technology has enabled that subconscious thought of convenience. I can get it probably faster or cheaper or better, or I have choice about whether I can get something online immediately delivered to my door, etc. So expectations have changed based on a much broader scenario than just how a retailer interacts with a customer.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think even in the modern era, right, like the consumer behavior, or let's put it this way, the customer expectations, right? They happen to be the biggest differentiator for every retailer, right? We've heard that story over and
Yes.
over again, that the experience that, let's say, a Nordstrom gives you versus a Macy's gives you, or a Decker store gives you versus a Foot Locker store gives you, right? Like uh, that's where the differentiation is, right? That's where the power is, and I've heard you say that a lot of times. what really differentiates the retailers who are actually nailing the customer experience versus others who are purely delivering services? Like, what stands out for you the most?
I think retailers are learning to stop thinking about the customer journey because that immediately puts in your head that it's a linear thing, and everybody knows it's not linear anymore. And so I think if you are approaching it with how can I help them make the best decision, that changes how you work with the consumer. And so I would say that they want you to know about them without feeling watched. Okay. But it is, they have this ability to make it easier. Look, the bottom line is, and we all know this as human beings, anytime you can remove friction, that is what you're trying to do. That makes an automatic great experience for a customer. Now, you have to look at that in a different way. The way that I think about it now is not so much a customer journey, but an ecosystem. Think about all of the ways the customer approaches your brand or how what services you can provide. Think of it as more of an ecosystem instead of they go from here to here to here, because then you can think about what their challenges are at each step in the process and figure out where can I reduce friction? How can I make this a better decision for them versus how can I sell them my product?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I love the fact that you said it's an all-rounded approach than just selling the
Yeah.
product or the service. Right? Now, from that perspective, we've all had various degrees of experience when it comes to e-commerce shopping versus in-store shopping versus click and collect, various different forms that we have. We see those methods merging on a daily basis, right? Or on a monthly basis. Like we're seeing new methods evolving, retailers exploring different self checkout methods, and, you know, uh, come to the store, book it, and get it delivered to your home and whatnot, right? Like it's the permutations are endless. Um, and then there is on the technology side, there is an immense amount of innovation that is happening, Vicky, right?
Yes.
People are adopting RFID. People are going from handheld RFID deployments to like always on technology deployments so that they get their inventory accuracies almost perfect, right? One of the things that always intrigues me is the accuracy of inventory, right? Inventory availability information that retailers now have with RFID powered stores is significantly better than what it was before, right?
Yes.
Now, with that, what is stopping retailers from giving that inventory information in the hands of shoppers, right? So, technology has given you a place where you understand if an item is in a store. You also
Yeah.
understand if the exact size is in the store, the exact color that you're looking for is in the store. You can get down to a zone level information of it. You can get down to the exact location in the store. You can do a pathing to it. uh, Technology supports that, right?
Yes.
RFID is deployed in a lot of retailers, but we are still not seeing that shape up to the velocity that initially RFID was expecting to grow at. Like, why do you think that's the case, and what is stopping the technology growth from happening or the implementation growth from happening?
It's a great question. There's a lot of nuances to that add to that. I think that your what you said is spot on, and it's a very good observation and talks about where we are today. So, what is stopping it? First of all, there's not one answer because it has to do with different retailers' situations. And I'll just give you a very high level example of that. So, large retailers that have a tremendous amount of technology and systems, okay, and not just large retailers, but multi-level retailers in that they provide retail, they provide wholesale, they provide, direct to consumer, potentially B2B. There are a lot of systems behind all of that. And as we know, not all of them communicate with each other in the best way possible. And so you are dealing with this incredible amount of technology and advancement, but not necessarily. They have two problems. One is I can't do it fast enough because of all of the surrounding factors, or I am not sure if I have the underlying data to support it. Okay. Yes, they have data. Of course, retailers have data. What they're really working hard on now, it's been a problem for a long time, but it's being force functioned in, is my data is key. The faster I can get it into an accessible place, the faster I can provide what you said, inventory accuracy. The other thing I would say about that specific point, because I think it's really critical, we've been talking about inventory accuracy, making sure the customer is not disappointed. It's there when they think it's there. You're able as a retailer to offer accurate information. It's going to come. It is in the warehouse. It is in the store, etc. That's been a problem for a long time. The difference today is that the technology exists to, you don't have to replace all your systems to get accurate inventory. So the technology exists. We're right at that cusp of how is the smartest and best way I can implement it to really improve that inventory accuracy. So it's always been an issue. Now they have a way to solve it, but it's not a one size fits all. And it is not only one solution.
I loved that answer, Vicky. I think you went to the real root cause that at least I've experienced. Exactly experienced that in the last 1 decade of working with retail and retail customers, right? So there are these legacy systems which are having a hard time in adapting to the new age needs and requirements. The retailers are locked in, right, with a lot of these legacy systems because
Yeah.
rip and replace doesn't work when you're talking about core technology systems, right? It's a much, much, much harder ecosystem to change for them, right? You have stores that are live, you have DCs that are live, all of them are feeding out of these existing old legacy systems, right? And then most of the innovation that is happening in peripherals, right? Where there are technology providers that are coming up with interesting, innovative solutions that are layering on top of these legacy systems or are trying to
Yes.
solve the problem that these legacy systems aren't able to, right? Like we happen to be one of them. And it's absolutely incredible that I think in my experience of 10 years of building products in the retail industry, I've understood the most important thing to solve when you're introducing or launching a new product is to make sure that it is easily integrable into the legacy system. That's the
Yes.
only way you can get to even the initial few customers that you have. You have to make it so simple that for the retailers, getting anything done from their existing solution providers is not needed. You are providing open APIs, different methods, Kafka based integrations, these, that, right? Like, or simple file sharing based integration or simple deep link, like anything which eases the integration for these legacy systems and makes it easier for these retailers to convince their internal technology teams that this is going to be straightforward, right? I think I absolutely loved the perspective that you gave because that's exactly the experience I've had, and I think and that's what differentiates the solution providers, right, as they launch newer technologies in the market. So
I would
uh,
love to follow on to that point because you are correct. You make a very good point. And there's two aspects of that. what I am most excited about for retail and for retailers is exactly what you said. Because of the speed of technology and the innovation, we've never been in such a strong position to bridge the gap
Hmm.
without an overhaul. Okay, whether it's APIs, a layer, etc. Your data in disparate places, which a lot of people have. It's not that they have bad data; they just don't have combined data. So the fact that the technology exists is so exciting to be able to graduate step by step,
Yeah.
solve a problem without an overhaul. So I completely agree with you there. However, we also have to change our mindset of how the relationship between the solution provider and the retailer exists.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, you see it and you have a product and you want to be able to speak to the retailer about that. But in the past, with different technology, the line and the way that someone promoted that was, it's so easy. It just plug this
Yeah.
in, and it minimizes the immediately you don't have credibility because it minimizes your understanding of
Yeah.
what their real challenges could be.
Hmm.
So the more you understand as a solution provider that yes, you can actually stand behind the ease of implementation, but you have to do that while recognizing that you are not the only cog
Yeah.
in the wheel, that there's other things at play. And I think that the solution providers are really understand that and being able to talk about your product in a way that really resonates with the retailer and because you have an understanding of their business. And that's where relationships really help because you do understand their business. So the conversation you are having isn't a uninformed one. It's
Hmm.
an informed conversation. And I think that helps make all the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Vicky, there is this entire department within retailers, right? Which is the procurement department, right? Where they have their own methods and their own processes that they go through, right? And
Yep.
um, when you're buying legacy systems or when you're buying technology which has become table stakes, right?
Yeah.
It's a the procurement team is definitely very uh, supportive, right? Or their processes are very helpful because you
Yeah.
have like maybe 20 vendors out there and it is important to get the best three to the table. It's
Yeah.
important to negotiate well. So perfectly good. But then you have these innovation initiatives, right? Where, right now, let's say, for example, camera vision. There is so much innovation happening with camera vision when it comes to retail store that
Yeah.
the, the amount of stuff that you can do. Earlier people used to think of, okay, I want to make sure that from a safety perspective cameras are useful, right? Security
Right.
perspective cameras are useful. Now then it went into shopper analytics. Now we're looking at, visual merchandising being compliant, right, from the guides that you're giving and whatnot, right? You're looking at case building, you're looking at machine learning algorithms running on these camera vision data feeds, right? There is just earlier, I remember, I think only 5% of the security camera feed was actually consumed. Now you're seeing it to a point where, a huge chunk of it is actually being used. Maybe not by the security team, by a lot of other departments, right? That change is happening. But the
Yes.
challenge that I see is when these innovation initiatives are coming out, the methods that the procurement teams are following, right, make it very difficult for innovation arms to position their products, right? Because the thought process of a table stakes technology versus something which is new out of the box, fresh out of the oven. This is like, how are you looking at that, and what can retailers do to make it better, and what can innovation arms within solution providers do to make it easier? It's a
That
loaded
is,
question.
yes, it is. It's not just a loaded question. It's a real. It's an absolutely great question. It's a real issue, and it isn't just procurement. If we step back for a minute, and you see it in procurement, but there are a couple of areas inside the process for retailers to find the best technology, solution providers to put forth the best technology, and how do you get to the point where you're using it, you're partnering, and that. So in that process, there are several things at play. What the procurement team is doing, as we know, is critically important. Okay. What the legal team is doing is important. What the CFO is doing is important. But in those specific areas, what we're seeing is that what was the process that was in place, okay, all along, is really being disrupted severely because the technology is not only different, but it's coming at a very different pace. And the decisions are not as holistic as they used to be.
Hmm.
Okay. So when you think about how the industry is changed so much, people want to do quick proof of concept, and they can. Okay. But the
Absolutely.
contractual process is built around back and forth and RFPs and a lot of legal languages and an introduction of way more risk now because of AI.
Hmm.
So a retailer really has to be careful that they are protected in new ways. Okay. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of factors that impact what was a current inside process of contractual motion, okay? Not
Yeah.
just procurement. So how do we solve that? That's what we're finding when we do these VIP connects, when we break down some of those real bad friction points, okay, and speed to solution
Right.
is really being hampered by old processes with new innovation and new technology,
Hmm.
right? That's what's happening. And so the only thing I can tell you that, and I don't mean it to sound trite or that it's easy, is education is critical. Partnership is critical. And when I say partnership, I'm not just talking between the vendor and retail, the retail person that you're working with definitely wants to find a way to satisfy their inner organization, but also needs your help to help bring that explanation to gives them the tools to work within their organization. One of the things that many solution providers don't understand is how many people are involved in a decision inside the retailer. They have partners inside. They work with the CFO, they work with the CMO, a technologist works with. It is a very partnership discussion. It is prioritization at an executive level. Not any one person has the decision making. So if you want to break away from some of these friction points, you have to help your client, okay, the retailer, with the information they need to speak to their internal partners.
Hmm.
And I know that's an kind of a high level answer, but it is the only way. If they want to work with you, they understand the innovation, then it has to be a joint effort to get the tools to them to help them internally.
Yeah.
And I will tell
Yeah.
you the final point for that is, what is the business problem we're solving? A, or what is the business problem that we are improving?
From a technology solution provider perspective, right? You care about that
Yes.
the retailer had a problem, you had a solution, right? And you know that the solution will solve their problem. But then there are metrics that you try and put so that there is a way of measuring the success and like showing continuous improvement and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
um, I've also experienced sometimes, Vicky, the solution and the metrics and the way they are measured sometimes can be disconnected, right?
Very.
Sometimes,
100.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes they're disconnected because the retailer wants it that way, because there is some internal person who is making sure that the technology provider, is successful. Whereas in certain cases, there are, technology providers who are working towards making sure that, oh, we meet the contractual commitment. The solution works or doesn't work. I just have to prove these metrics, and I get a full contract. Like, what are you seeing on those lines? Because this is something that I've been experiencing. Like, we're sitting in an on the table presenting the solution. The retailer is telling it on our face that what we're seeing with you guys is something that we haven't seen in the industry, but they are still going with
Right.
the older commitment because there is someone who's internally who's ready to put their line, or they're ready to put their neck on line, right? Because they have a relationship. Like, are you seeing that? Is that happening often? Vicky, what's your experience with that?
Okay. Are we seeing that? Absolutely. It is, you have hit on a very key point and a very interesting point in all of the conversations we have in our meetings where we have both solution providers and retailers at the table. I will tell you that one, there's a couple of really hot button issues, and ROI and metrics is absolutely almost at the very top. And here is why. And again, I know sometimes I sound like a broken record, but I'll tell you about how you can solve that. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it is based on understanding. The description that you gave, the example that you just gave, is an example of you are speaking two completely different languages. You might as well be speaking French and someone else speaking English. When you talk about I deliver the metrics, those metrics are legitimate metrics, but what they consider metrics are not the same. And it sounds simple, but we have found in conversation after conversation that how the CFO or the retailer thinks about metrics and what they are measuring is different than what the solution provider is putting forth for what they can legitimately prove. Every solution has metrics that say, look, we've developed this. We know that we can improve here, here, and here. Okay. But it isn't either, it's not in the same language or it's not measuring what the other side is measuring. This comes down to a fundamental understanding of who understands whose business at what level, why the metrics have, how a retailer weighs and measures things based on the problem. So it is a complete disconnect of the language. And what solves that is, again, open communication, trust and transparency. And if I had to bring it down to one thing, is if you start with shared outcome, start there and say, if you have a good relationship with the retailer, you say, okay, we're going to put this forth that demonstrates shared outcome for both of us. What do you need? What are the metrics you need? And I hate to say it that way, and I hate to also say, what does the CFO need? But how is the business measuring it? Okay. If you understand how the business is measuring it versus the improvements your technology delivers, those two can be completely different numbers. So you're offering something, it's not being accepted because you're not speaking in the language that they are measuring. This is an absolutely key point that we talk about over and over. So, how do you get there? If you're talking about a shared outcome, you can reframe your ways to measure in
Hmm.
the way they need to hear it, prove it, deliver it to their internal stakeholders, their
Yeah.
internal partners. It's a relationship, a communication problem. It is not a capability problem. It is you're speaking different languages.
Yeah. Yeah. And Vicky, we've also observed that a lot of times, there is a difference between a strategic partner versus a vendor, right? And um a lot of times we've also seen that eventually as the implementation is happening, right, the vendor relationship or the strategic partner relationship which was established becomes a very transactional relationship, right? What are some of the methods
Yes.
that you've seen effective in overcoming that?
Yes. It is. Look, it's a real issue. Okay. Part of it is terminology. Part of it is behavior that is kind of ingrained from both sides. Okay. Um, and when you break it down, it is a trust factor. Okay. We come from years of needing to protect what is important to my business, important to my career, important to my life. Okay. And it is, and how we used to buy, how retailers used to buy technology is very different than today. It is more partnership oriented. We're all figuring this out together, both retailers and solution providers. And yes, you could, at a very high level, say a vendor sells something and a strategic partner solves a business problem. Like you could put that in a very generic sentence that that's the difference, but that's not doing a service to the real aspect of how you solve problems together. Because the reality is the solution provider has the desire to solve your business problems. And what happens is they're being constrained because of past assumptions when they really have a ton of expertise. They have seen the industry as much as, yes, from a different lens, but as much as any retailer has. They have experience by looking at many different clients. And so they do have experience, but how do they break in? It really comes down to developing trust. Sometimes you can start from a place of trust just based on someone's personality. Sometimes you have to earn the trust. And the way that you earn the trust is starting with a shared outcome, starting with a relationship, and showing that you can be trusted, that what you said is in fact what, not what you deliver, but what you said even before you deliver, how your conversations went, how you were getting from one conversation to the next. At each step of the way, were those conversations honest? Now,
Yep.
I will always stop and say that the retailer has every bit as much responsibility in that
Hmm.
relationship as the solution provider. They have to trust that the information they give to the solution provider won't be used against them in a
Correct.
negotiation. Okay. And so they have to change their mentality also. This is not a one side
Yeah.
solution. This is a joint relationship solution.
Yep. I love that. And I've also seen that when retailers put their trust on the table, right, and they walk along the journey of making it a strategic partnership, right, because no strategic partnership is can be one sided. It has to be both sides flowering the the
Exactly.
plant, right? Like that's the only way it works. And I've seen that a lot of times when retailers are ready to let go a little bit and invest in that relationship is when the vendor or the solution provider is also ready to go a lot of extra miles where they would do things out of their way to make the retailer successful, right? So no, I absolutely love that perspective, Vicky. I have one last question for you. What are the things that you would consider when you're selecting a strategic partner for a long term relationship, right? Because we've also seen that in the retail stores, it's been very hard to consolidate technologies, right? As a store
Yeah.
associate, as a store colleague, you're working with 10 different applications. The data team is struggling with 200 different data sources, right? And those are real problems at every level. If you were the CIO of a retailer, what decisions would you take to make sure that you put the right bet on the right technology provider where you can have a long term relationship and trust?
So that's a it's a it's a it's not a tough question. It has more to do with how I approach things.
Mm,
So I haven't been in a CIO seat for a while, so understanding all of the aspects of which technology and how would I do that, but I don't think that's what you're asking. It has to do with how I would approach creating success for my business, okay, and serving the customer in the best way possible and helping them. And that's always how I approached any decision when I was in seat for my internal partners and my external partners. What I think is different now that technologists are understanding and marketers and ecom and everybody who's in seat is I don't think of it as suppliers and solutions and technology. I think of it as an ecosystem. Okay. We have to get information from so many more sources to understand and have a well rounded understanding of what my business needs, what my customer needs. All of us as consumers, nothing is a finite, specific decision. Everything is a decision based on many factors. So if I was in seat, I would also be cultivating relationships across different innovators, universities, um, startups, talking to other um, peers. Our peer network is what everyone in seat will tell you is the most important thing to them. It's who they trust. I know it comes back to trust, but whenever you are in a place where you are speaking to someone who truly understands your challenges, then the empathy happens, the barriers go down, and you can come to solutions. So I have relied on my people through my whole career, regardless of the role that I was in. And I will tell you that that's what everyone else is doing too. You rely on your people.
love that. Love that perspective, Vicky. I think um, I'm seeing that more and more, right? Like communities like Women in Retail, communities like,
Yes.
the CIO Connects and whatnot, they're becoming so
Yes.
critical. I'm also seeing a lot of, like, for example, not just in the retail world, but also in the technology provider or solution provider world, the CEOs and the CTOs, they're looking for their own network of people. Even though they are competitors, they are exchanging notes and trying to figure out what's working for the others, what are the bottlenecks, right? So that the whole ecosystem grows instead of individually trying to make yourself successful. Vicky, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for doing this. Do you want to make the audience understand your background a little bit? What are you up to? What are the new things that you're working on? We'd love to know a little bit more about you.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for the conversation. These are things that I love to talk about. My whole goal in this world or after the career that I've had, or during this last part of the career that I have, is to just make retail better, just give back to the industry. So all of these conversations are important to me. We have some exciting things going on. We are about to, later this month, we are opening the VIP Awards for 2027, for January 2027. So we'll be opening nominations at the end of the month. We're really excited about that. We will be we'll be doing a VIP Connect, those strong connection, equal table retailer vendor, really working through some of the tough solutions. We'll be doing a VIP Connect in front of the Retail Club AI Festival on September 22nd. We're really excited about that. And so I would encourage everyone to be following on me on LinkedIn, but also Vendors in Partnership, so that you can see all of the exciting things that we have coming up.
Yep. I love the approach, Vicky, that you guys are following, which is you're deepening the real relationships, right? The
Yes.
in-person relationships, the sense of belongingness, the sense of an ecosystem play instead of, a one-sided growth journey. So just love that, and I'm very excited to see how this is going to evolve over the years.
I know, me too. Everyone comes into the room as an industry expert. Like
Mm,
you said, we understand the challenges that we have. We have to sell, we have to buy, we have to serve. And so we can help each other. So,
absolutely, absolutely. And Vicky, people that are interested in chatting with you or collaborating with you, they can reach out to you on LinkedIn and
yes, that's the best. That's the best part. And Vicki at vendorsinpartnership.com is email. But yeah, that's the easiest way. And we're currently in the process of updating the website for the new season upcoming.
awesome. Look forward to that, Vicky. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a great
Thank
conversation.
you so much.